All right, it is 10 o'clock, and so I will call this meeting to order. The January 11th, 2023, getting used to that, meeting of curriculum instruction. Looks like we do not have public comments, so we're good to move on. Did you get to look over the minutes from the last meeting? Any corrections or additions?
No, I don't think so.
All right, those will stay. I don't tend to take a motion on that because it's a
Yeah.
little more informal here, as long as we get a chance to make corrections or additions. So those minutes will stand. And at this point, we're on the agenda. If we want to make board comments, don't feel like you have to, but if you have something to say at this point, this is the time to just have a statement to make. You can feel free, and then we'll get into our
I'm going to
presentation.
keep it very brief. Thank you. I'm looking forward to good learning.
And again, I usually get into it, but what I will say to you as a new board member, we do policy, but I look at the policy that they're working on anyway. I think if you want to learn the system, curriculum and instruction is where it's at. You will learn so much. You'll see the personnel. And so I personally love curriculum and instruction and was happy that Ms. Johnson asked me to say it. I think
I'm happy
at some
she
point,
asked you to say it.
at some point I need to move to policy, but I love instruction. So I think this will allow you to learn a lot about this.
That's what I'm hoping. Good.
All right. With that, please take it away.
Yeah, so good morning. Welcome, Ms. Allen, to the Curriculum Instruction Committee. Just to give you a little bit of background, many of the folks that will come through and share will be doing basically a yearly update. We cycle through those through the year. So Dr. Cash, we have Dr. Horn and Colleen Field today. You'll see other content areas. In addition to the curriculum areas, you also hear probably related to English learners or possibly our early childhood program. You might hear about intervention. It's really anything instructional that occurs in our district. So you'll hear from a number of people across multiple departments as we move through the cycle every year. We also will get topics that are, of course, requested by board members on the committee themselves. Hey, this is a new topic, it's maybe something new in legislation, can we get an update or can we get some information? And usually within probably 2 meetings of a request, we have a presentation to put together. Some of those presentations you require us to work with colleagues in different departments to make sure we have the most thorough accounting of information for you. So it is very much a clearinghouse for board members to be kept up to speed on what's happening with instruction, any new developments that are occurring as a result of things like Blueprint or state law. So we are happy to entertain topics as board members have requested. So as part of our annual updates, we're going to hear from Dr. Cash, who is our curriculum specialist for world languages, about updates to the program. And I think he has one thing in particular I'm excited that he's going to share now. We're coming out of our pandemic. So I'll turn it over to Dwayne.
Good morning again, ladies, and thank you again for coming. And perhaps the next time we converse, we can do so. Very interesting. Wanted to start with a reminder of our world language course offerings. We are now at a point of 4 languages: American Sign Language, French, Latin, and Spanish. As we have discussed previously, we have some German teachers, all of which have retired. The Latin pool is also beginning to shrink, and so we are looking at some opportunities, or have put in place some opportunities for some dual enrollment to address some other things in other languages for students for languages that we currently do not offer. American Sign Language continues to show the most growth, and in fact, public principals are even looking to add that for the coming year. The challenge there is finding the number of personnel who can satisfy that request, and not just statewide, but nationally. There's a teacher shortage, there's a world language shortage, and there's even a greater ASL shortage. Continue here at the middle schools, where we have one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is that in conversation with some of the middle school principals, where there's only a French teacher, we were able to work with Mr. Saunders and secure the services of a retired French teacher. So we offer that to We implemented the benchmark assessments, which are 3 assessments per level for levels 1 and 2. Teachers have been directed to count those as a quiz grade and no more. And I do realize mathematically they're still considered differently in each one of the classes, but that's what happens now. And it serves primarily as to what a benchmark should do to provide teachers, students, and parents with information about how they are progressing throughout the curriculum at each level. I was fortunate, thanks to Dr. Cuffett, who from time to time has been very good at quote unquote finding some funds. And so we found some funds for some teachers to have some articulation throughout the year. Tend to meet with them once or twice a year, as you know, as a whole group. But these teachers were able to come together and still in place now to meet via Google Meet, sometimes as often as twice per week, to collaborate on lesson plans, resources, activities, and just to share ideas with each other in terms of their planning to kind of work more collaboratively. That has happened primarily with ASL, French, and English. Latin teachers, smaller groups tend to do that kind of informally, and usually at least once a month. We have been fortunate, thanks to the help me, Dr. Pepper, the professional, what is that shop called that was able to give us the mid-year new hire?
Organizational development.
Organizational development, so that we've had a chance to reconnect with some people who were hired after the process. And then those teachers also are going to be capitalizing on some opportunities to visit some other teachers as well as a part of their learning experience.
Okay, if you don't mind jumping, this is a great opportunity just to make sure. We do a new hire symposium in the fall for new teachers. That's 4 days, orients them to curriculum materials, a number of other things. Special education, in addition, does an additional 1 week, I think, prior to new hire symposium, just because of the sheer number of things that those folks need to be oriented to. And what we're finding with late hires, we have many people that are hired after, and we also have our mid-year hires, students who graduate from college in December. So this year we instituted a 2-day, 1-day live, and then I think asynchronous options and I offered that to any of the, I think it was 176 teachers. That's ballpark, who were hired after New Hire Symposium, and about a little under half of those took advantage of opportunity. And some of those people had just been hired, or their first day of work was the next day. And so not only Dwayne, but all curriculum folks, special education intervention folks had that opportunity. So that's a new structure we put in place because the dynamic changing with so many late hires, not only here in Frederick County, but across the nation. Thanks.
When he says fall, he means summer, fall. They would take them out of school 4 days for new teachers.
Right.
It's in the
Right, I
summer.
got that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I said
Orientation.
something about
Yeah.
fall the other day, and they go, Kevin, it's August, it's
Yes,
summer, but
yes.
it's the fall semester.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad.
I was
Okay, I
hired.
was tracking.
I was
Yeah.
hired October 1st the year in 1993, and I missed all of that. And there wasn't anything to pick it up, and I never got it the next year either. So
The Seal of Literacy, which is an award that started some years ago in California and has made its way to Maryland. The first year of its implementation, FCPS did not participate, so we are now participating. But it is given to students who at some point, middle school or high school, have demonstrated proficiency in at least one other language through one of the approved assessments as indicated by the state committee on which I serve as a member, and also their proficiency in English at some point in high school. So we awarded a total of 40 the last school year in Chinese, French, and even Latvian, as well as Spanish. So as you see here, it does not have to necessarily be a language that we teach, but as long as we have a student, whether it's an English learner, someone who is coming to us from a different country, a student does not have to sit through a class as long as they have some proficiency, be it travel experiences, be it a home exposure, and that person can sit for an approved test. The goal here is at some point is to begin to do something a little bit more systemic. Dr. Gull and the English Learners Office and I are working together because we feel like we have a number of students, for example, particularly they obviously come to us already proficient in some other language, and therefore they're in English learning. That's we want to try to capture that. This number is also down from the previous year, of course, because of the pandemic. I know that's tended to be a catch-all phrase, but it is definitely applicable in this case.
Can you just speak to, that's a question I had as you were talking,
Okay.
how students learn about this and what ways you're thinking about getting more?
So the information is captured on the website, on the student landing page, as well as the parent landing page. The information is provided in brochure format to all of the world language department chairs that we disseminate through all of our classes there. Dr. Gold also has that information that she's given to her teachers to disseminate to students as well. What I have begun to ask teachers and how can we begin to look at the financing of this? For example, one of the cheaper assessments is called STEM assessment, which is about $20 per student. Not an inordinate amount of money, but of course, once we start to talk about $20 times thousands of students, it's kind of like how is that funded? So we provide students at least with the brochure that contains the assessments. Several of the high schools have indicated they're also communicated that electronically to their parents and things that they distribute to the students as well. In an ideal world, and I don't know that Ms. England would approve of this, but we'd like to have a testing day wherein they could come and everything. But of course, you have to look at the finances as well as another day of testing as well. But steadily working toward it.
I do have a question.
Certainly.
When you speak to proficiency, do you mean in both written and spoken?
So typically for most of the assessments, that's at least two of the domains. For example, on the ALERA assessment, which deals with LAC, which is not a spoken language, but they have to show the writing and understanding of culture as well as history because it's LAC and there is no spoken. The STAMP assessment will look at all four, meaning listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So it's based upon the assessment.
Okay.
Some of the SAT subject tests, for example, in the different languages will be heavier on the speaking component as opposed to the other. As I alluded earlier, we were fortunate again through the assistance of Dr. Tuffet and different Title IV funding. So we currently have an opportunity that's happening at Brunswick High as well as Brunswick High, where students are enrolled in LAC 1. Well, semester 2 will start tomorrow. So LAC 2 and ASL 2, and through an agreement with the community college, the students will be getting credit for high school world languages as well as 101 and 102. The thinking behind this was to try to address students in populations that might not have an opportunity via reasons of finance, transportation, or otherwise, may not necessarily have college on the brain, to put it in layman terms. We're hoping that if we can do more and more of this, and then of course, then we're creating a pipeline not only for the community college, but the students leave us with more college credits so that they see something this is feasible, and obviously this is saving students and parents money on tuition. Excuse me.
I said, I'm sure that's always welcome. That's the saving of the tuition dollar.
Okay. And you already covered this, target populations in the community college. Beginning this summer, we're going to have again what we used to have a summer camp in response to some parents and just some thinking about our not having articulated programs at the elementary level. So the first of these will be for rising second and third graders. It's an exploratory camp. This summer we'll even be fortunate to have two people who are going to do sections in Russian and Italian. So students cycle through 6 or 7 languages each day. And after teachers have addressed a particular thing, for example, it could be the environment. So we'll be talking about rainforests, we'll be talking about reduction of materials, recycling, those kinds of things. So we do those things in the target language. We end with a gallery walk and ceremony for the parents, other persons who wish to come, wherein the students walk the adults through, this is what we did this week with each one of these languages. And then they'll give a presentations to talk about their experiences. It's really, 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 really a good time for students and teachers to have fun as well as learn some things. Where you could try to cap it off with some software and some other kind of things that they can continue their study throughout the year. That's exploratory camp, which is for the younger students. And then for the upper level elementary students, I'll call them, we have a Spanish immersion camp where it is just that. The students will be completely immersed in the language. I also have the idea to add the Latin teacher to it so that the students go each day to learn the Latin derivatives, the etymology of different things, and how Latin basically becomes the motherboard for all of these languages we call Romance languages. So I want to take a quick pause here to say thank you to Mr. Mark Fritz, who's been very helpful in working with me and the principal of Spring Ridge Elementary, which is where it's going to be hosted this summer. And that information will be distributed via Find Out First and to elementary schools in the next probably week or two.
I'm very excited to see this experience returning. This was one that we obviously didn't proceed with. And if you have an opportunity to go out and visit, it is very exciting to see kids get jazzed out about just exploring languages and it's a great social event. There's a lot of fun activities, but this is might be the very spark that could cause a student to really explore languages with some passion. So we're excited to see this happen.
I'm very excited because my first ever job, I think architect maybe was working at the UN as an interpreter. It didn't pan out, but I do love language. My latest one that I was trying was Russian in my car, and I had to take the tapes back to the library, but I've done Italian in my car. And so to hear Italian and Russian, it's like nice. That sounds so exciting.
We can save you a slide.
So yeah, I think you really answered all of my questions that I pretty much had in your presentation. I was looking for the summer opportunities. That's very exciting. Do you have any questions?
I do have a couple. So are there any other languages that students have expressed an interest in that they'd like to see, taught?
I'll say through some informal conversations, and what I hear from teachers is that they would like to be to have more exposure to any number of the Asian languages.
Okay.
But typically, I won't say discourage. We try to maybe calibrate that thinking or regulate that thinking a bit.
Yeah.
There's a temperature where there's a level 5 languages, which is among the hardest in the world to learn. Personnel there is very hard to attract, and often those teachers are unable to teach anything else. And as a system, once any of those people are kind of on the hook for their salaries and their benefits for years to come. And it takes, it sounds in vogue to learn Japanese or Chinese, or some students have even asked about Farsi. So continuing to work with Ana Maria Pinzón at the community college, and just even some virtual options that hopefully as it's come out of the State Department will get approved for through the State Department, is kind of going to be the best way that I think we can approach that, and probably the most economic.
But that would kind of leads into my next question.
Okay.
Is there any interest at the state level to make it a requirement that students have a second language, at the high school level? I mean, it's certainly a great preparatory for what's going to be required of them going into, an undergraduate.
So when you say requirement, because we now have the students have kind of the option of what the requirement of, and the CTE complete or the world language, one or the other has to be done by high school graduation.
Okay. All right.
Only 2 credits, which these students with a limited degree of proficiency, kind of still at the intermediate level, but I do think based upon the way we've changed the curriculum now, it is enough to at least begin to go out and do some preliminary things. Maybe not necessarily work at the UN, but it's certainly enough to begin to have some conversation and to be able to be functional.
Great.
The other thing, I don't mean to interrupt you, there are, Hebrew, if you are Jewish, there's a lot of times Hebrew school. Friday, someday I'm trying to think what day they would do, but, Arabic possibly. And I'm trying to rack my brain. You and I both virtually attended, and there's a group that's in Urbana, Sanskrit. So they're doing that privately, through, community groups or private groups. So students sometimes do have other opportunities that are in the school system. But I'm with you, and, I think we know student brains will accept languages. I mean, if we could get into the elementary level,
Yeah.
that would be the optimal thing, and of course, that's way down the road, but I would at some point, that would be so wonderful to see, so. Yeah, listen, I'm sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. And then for the benchmark assessments, is there a way to find what those benchmarks are? You don't have to answer that now, but I mean, if that's something that,
Is there a way to,
like, what are the benchmarks? So, is what I'm asking. So, what are the benchmarks in which you're measuring whether or not they can that?
so the benchmarks, let me just say, give the example of ASL. What we're looking at at three different points of the semester, basically how we chunk the curriculum. Each one, if you want to think of it as a little miniature comprehensive exam. So on the ASL, there would be some finger spelling, there'd be some receptive skills, some productive skills. We'd be looking at a brief video to see if students have gained enough at that point to interpret and write what is written. We'd be looking at some glossing, with transfer of English to ASL. So we take that information, fix it on each one, and so those build cumulatively to the second assessment, the third assessment. And that happens in levels 1 and 2.
So, I only have one question. Okay. Because we answered the other one. And that was looking, when you mentioned about the shortage for ASL teachers, is there any coordination or any coordinating with, I know that those are the students there that should, but there has to be at some level these students are learning, too.
So the partnership there has been challenged. I'm saying that word reluctantly, but most of our ASL classes visit the Maryland School for the Deaf as student service learning activities. We've done several things where our students are there to get a sense of their level of comprehension, their proficiency, so that we can interact. Because the Maryland School for the Deaf is a public school that's addressing all areas, and we're addressing just the acquisition of sign language, the gap between what those students are able to do because they are deaf, already proficient in the language, and our students, that's been the challenge. And so it's trying to find the balance of this. It's a Alameda, for example, for I take students there to get them to feel like, oh, I'm comprehending what I'm learning versus I'm completely overwhelmed because no one speaks here. Because it's a means of survival.
Yeah, right.
So in terms of getting those teachers to do anything with our students, just because they're two different entities, that's been a challenge. And I don't know that we talk with them about, I need two ASL coming here looking for that, but those avenues generally don't produce very many other people who are full-time.
One of my last years of teaching, I had a deaf student in my fourth grade class, and so I got to work directly with two sign language interpreters. And it was really interesting. I had 31 students and 4 adults in the room. We were a little crowded, but they were wonderful. They were there to support the student, but they were just wonderful to work with. And what I really learned, I came in one day and they were doing something like this, and the other one was taking a picture. And they looked at them kind of quizzically, and they're like, well, we think this is slavery, and the student thinks this is slavery. And so when we get a question like that, we'll take a picture and send it to the other sign language interpreters in the county and see what's there, because it's not an exact, use its own language with its own syntax. And so that was interesting. But, they were wonderful. So, thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you both. It was a pleasure meeting you.
You're free to roll the plans. Thank you very much, Dwayne. So our second presentation, again, this is another one of the annual updates, is around elementary and secondary science. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Warren and Ms. Colleen Beal.
Good morning.
Thanks, Susan.
I'm Colleen Beal. I'm the secondary science curriculum specialist.
Good. Is it right?
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about secondary science today. So as we're returning to, we're returning to our pre-pandemic expectations, we're trying to capture lab skills and things like that you might have missed out a little bit on through the pandemic. And with everything, I always have a very large safety focus. So always wear your goggles, label everything. And with this, with getting back into more labs and safety, we also have a lot more new teachers. And our early career teachers, so our first 3 years, we have about 40. And this past year, we hired over 20 secondary science teachers, so grades 6 through 12. And that was a little higher than, actually, it's the highest that we hired in my recent memory. And a lot of our science teachers, too, there's a greater proportion of science teachers who do not have traditional educational training. So they're coming to us as conditional. So we're giving them more support with that. They're very strong in the content, but they're not familiar with the public school system or the pedagogy of teaching. We are devoting a lot of time to nurturing them in their careers.
Well, and to Colleen's point, some of the folks that are probably in like year 2 and year 3 with us were the teachers in their undergraduate who didn't have a typical student teaching experience. Their student teaching experience could have very well been online,
Yes.
which is not a typical science lab.
Yes. So,
Although they got very creative.
They did.
yeah, absolutely. We had a great opportunity in October where we pulled our early career teachers together, and it was years 1 through 3, and we really focused on things of like, how do you organize a lab? How do you manage those materials? We again emphasized safety and everything like that, things that they would not have picked up when they were teaching virtually and student teaching and everything like that. So, and it was terrific. It was a great opportunity. Things that we are looking at with the addition of a 0.5 health requirement their junior year, that's giving us an opportunity for what other 0.5 credits. So one thing that we're exploring and bringing to the board in March is the possibility of I'm calling it, I don't have a snazzy title for it yet, but a special topics in science. And so similar to social studies has a global issues, but things that we don't have time for in their core science classes, but we'd be able to explore and expand in an elective. And we're even thinking of, wouldn't it be awesome to have like a 1 and a 2? So if kids wanted to take it all semester, they could get a full credit, or they could move in and out. So they take it for a term and then take their health. So it would attract kids who, and we also want to design it so that
it mirrors our well-rounded science education. I'm a biology major, love that, but I have my children are much more physical science folks and give me a hard time. But we want to we reflect that well-rounded science. So we want to put that into our elective too.
And just so you know, with the 0.5 health credit, Mr. Murphy's been working with our team to have a number of content areas create these 0.5 options, gives principals a lot of opportunities for scheduling that health credit into the master schedule. If we have a number of offerings that can be available to students across multiple content areas.
And we've been talking with, with high school teachers, and they have so many great creative ideas because they're like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And that's why we were thinking if we start with special topics, we could really create a really dynamic class that would attract a lot of kids.
Well, I think the thing that would be nice about special topics, which is what happens with global issues course, is those topics can adjust and change as the science environment around us changes. And I think that makes learning very relevant for kids because we're tapping into pretty much the everyday.
Yeah, so we could do James Webb Telescope, we could do fusion,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff.
Fusion. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, exactly. Very excited.
Right.
And other things that we've been doing to support our teachers is we offer a professional learning community after school about twice a quarter. And that is when our teachers can get together and plan with each other. So across the county, it's great for our veteran teachers as well as our new teachers. We started as we were transitioning to our Maryland State Science Standards, and we have kept it up. And it is just a really terrific opportunity for them to work across the county. Because sometimes our schools are small and you have singletons, so it's terrific to get together with someone else. And the science office is there too. So we talk about other different things. Okay. And book studies, we started that a few years ago, tailoring it to our science teachers. We offer it to 6th to 12th. And it's fantastic because I think if I tried to purposely do a mix of teachers, I probably wouldn't be as successful because almost every book study we offer, we get an almost even mix of middle and high school teachers. And the rich conversations that we have that come out of that, regardless of the book that we're doing, is fantastic. It's one of our most successful professional learning. We have taken our department chair meetings and we have moved them after school. And so in the past, pre-pandemic, we would pull our department chairs once a semester for a full day, but now I see them more often, but for an hour, and it is a workshop paid opportunity after school. And so I get more contact with them and I'm able to give them updates throughout the year.
In the book studies, does that get them credit or
Yes, it gets them a credit.
to give some of the time?
Sure, absolutely. One that we started right coming out of the pandemic was called Onward, and it is growing emotional resilience in teachers. It's something that's not as scientific, but has been so well received. And it is because every month there is a disposition that you're looking at and a habit like self-care and positive self-perception. And then we talk about, well, how does that, in science, what can you do? And we also have, I just ran one on model-based science teaching. So modeling and what is a model in science? How can you use it in your classroom? Tied it into the Maryland Next Generation Science Standards, that sort of thing. One that I'm looking to whipping up this semester, because I have book study junkies who they might be doing it for the credit. I'm sure that's not their motivation. I'm sure their motivation is to collaborate with their colleagues and me, but is interactive notebooks or just science notebooks. And how can we use that to foster learning in the classroom? So we take suggestions. I browse through like the National Science Teaching Association books, that sort of thing, to try to keep us current. And what I love is sometimes we'll do a book and we're like, that's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. We learned something from it. And it's those conversations and how do we apply it to our teaching. And that has been really terrific. And Ms. Yoho, you had a question that you had sent,
Yeah.
and so I'm going to address it now in this slide. If that is, because you had asked about how do I see gender and ethnicity influencing participation in our science classes. So Ms. Allen, with our science classes in high school are core courses. So they're aligned to the Maryland State Science Standards. And you have to, with COMAR, you have to take 3 science classes and 3 lab courses. And one has to be physical science, life science, earth science. So if you follow our recommended sequence, the first course in 9th grade is either algebra-based physics, which is our accelerated course, or physics of earth and space movement honors, and an on-grade version of that. So that's our first course. Our second course is biology and honors and on-grade, and that is the course that has Maryland Integrated Science Assessment attached to it. I think we'll talk about that in the next slide. And then our third course is environmental science, chemistry honors, or fundamentals chemistry. So you take those 3 courses and then you get all the standards. And then after that, the world is your oyster, and we have advanced placement courses, IB courses, and then we have forensic science and earth space science research and climate, ocean, weather, space science, and everything like that. But what I focused on with your question, and if I went the wrong way, let me know, is I looked at our honors courses. And I compared it to our like FCPS in general, and we were pretty on par with the breakdown of FCPS in with ethnicity and gender with the breakdown. Things that stood out to me, because I was looking, I'm always interested in that too, and male and female, and just in science, that is always a question. And in general, in any advanced course in FCPS, females are about 52% and males are about 48%. In our algebra-based physics class, that 9th grade class, I thought this was fascinating. It was 50-50 male and female. And that really gave me like encouragement of why we should absolutely continue that offering in 9th grade, because physics notoriously is a little lighter in females, and that is probably when you look at our AP Physics, and especially our AP Physics C, which is calculus based, it's 75 male, 25% female. But our algebra-based physics is 50-50 in 9th grade. So I thought that was really interesting. And then I can go through, I have a few notes and things like that. I wasn't sure how deep you wanted me to be, and I'd be happy to give you something more formal. But bio especially tends to have more females than males. And but I found it interesting that chemistry, AP chemistry, 56% female. But our chemistry honors wasn't as high, which I thought was interesting too. But then I was thinking, well, maybe the boys are going to the physics rather than the chemistry.
Because I sit at It's Academic a lot. I try to get,
Yes.
I'm like, oh, come on, get some girls in the math round. And it was better this year. It was definitely better. I'm not sure. They're not the ones that are the quickest to answer, but that's okay. They're up there with their pencil scribbling. And I just, we like to think that we've come so far, but some of these barriers students are still putting on themselves. And I took an engineering course for educators, probably, I can't remember, I was at Tuscarora Elementary, so maybe 10 years ago. And one of the things it said in there was that they found at the college level, the girls still very much, female students in high school, still very much didn't necessarily think of engineering until you looked at how it could help people directly. So in the areas of like prosthesis, they could really pull girls in because they saw a direct connection of helping people. And so we might like to think that some of these stereotypes don't really exist, but they really sometimes do. And if you can figure ways to break them down and make inroads. That's just why I was interested. From my sitting there at It's Academic, and I'm like, hey, more girls in the math room this year. I'm glad to see that. So,
And one thing that we're looking at too is how do we invite all of our students to all of our upper level courses and what barriers exist. We're looking at math prerequisites, and because we have had a math prerequisite, and we're looking at PEAS honors versus not honors, and it's the same standards, so why are we using math as a gatekeeper? So those are some conversations that we're having internally, and we're having with our department chairs, so that all students have access to all the courses and can see themselves in all the courses.
Well, I'll just add on to that. The math as the prerequisite gateway was one of the challenges that we saw in computer science. So we had a math prerequisite. When we removed that, the explosion of students taking computer science and being very successful was pretty significant. So I'm glad to hear that Colleen and the team are looking at, is that just something that we've done historically? And we don't have a lot of data that that's actually the most effective way to do it. And once we do invite more students in, what are the support networks that we put in place so that they can be successful?
they're seeing that, Mr. Chaudhary, sorry, State Superintendent, that's come up on Professional Standards of Teacher Education Board. He said that these assessments to be a teacher are often just obstacles that have really no indication of how successful that person's going to be as a teacher, but it's keeping large populations sometimes out of going into the profession. If they fail the test once, they don't take it again. And so what are either the obstacles we can take away or the supports we can put in place without lowering standards? It's all, I know. So I'm glad to hear you're having these discussions. My father is a retired, just turned 92 yesterday, retired nuclear physicist who I always have to say quit high school, went in the military and became a nuclear physicist. And my middle daughter has a bachelor's degree in math, and didn't do the computer science math in college, but very much enjoyed being in the math department. So she works for Social Security Administration, but with her brother and her husband. But anyway, I digress for sure. So I'm just very glad to hear that we do. We just want to open, and I know you didn't get into the ethnicity, but it sounds like you're also looking at that data and just opportunities for all students.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely see areas of growth for that, and we've been looking at that systemically, whether it's in science or mathematics. That's been a big area of focus and conversation. We look at it, of course, with dual enrollment, AP access as well, and that's why I very intentionally said inviting a student in is sometimes the first step. It should be the first step. The second step is what supports do we have in place for students. So, that maybe that young lady who didn't necessarily perceive themselves going to a calculus-based course, inviting them in, but also not, if a student starts to struggle, bright, capable, hardworking student who hits a rough spot in the course, we should be able to step in and support, and not just say, well, obviously you weren't cut out for this course. That's kind of very old school thinking, and we have to make sure that those kinds of statements are not coming out of our educators' mouths, because they do know that there's a support network and this is how it would work. But yeah, that's been a huge focus for FCPS now for years, and has become even more intense under Dr. Dyson's leadership about every kid every day. So I appreciate that Colleen is spending time looking at the numbers and what does that mean for our actual students out there in the schools.
I want to talk to you a little bit about secondary science student programs. So Outdoor School is one of the programs that I supervise, and that is in 5th grade and 6th grade. And it is a day program. We have 4 teachers, 3 buses, and a truck/van with supplies, depending on if it is in the fall and spring with 6th grade, carries around a lot of boots. And in the winter, it carries around a lot of rocks and sledgehammers and goggles.
Good science
and
stuff.
that kind of thing. Yes. But we have returned to 2 full days for 5th and 6th grade students, and going strong with that. It's getting a little bit harder for us to fulfill the 2 days with our, especially in the winter, with our 5th grade. We have been growing as a county, and we have not had the opportunity yet to grow our outdoor school program.
When was the last time we added? Do you recall?
1994.
So you could
Or, sorry,
imagine.
1996. No, sorry, 2006. 2006 was the last one I was at ESSL.
Yeah.
So 2006, and in 2006 we actually had an assistant also, a special education assistant, but we have lost that. And we've added about 8 schools in the meantime, but we have not had an opportunity yet to, I'm trying.
Do all those teachers have their CDL license as
They
well?
do. Yes, yes. So they're driving the
Wow,
bus.
that's a big ask.
Yes, yes,
They
absolutely.
love it. I don't know any of them that doesn't love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they're very coveted positions.
Yeah, yes. So if you would ever like to see outdoor school, let me know.
It's,
It
it is fantastic. Yeah, you
I
can
was
drive
a
and meet
great
them there.
teacher, So.
We'll meet them
My
there.
grandma was born last week.
Oh, awesome.
So I've seen the outdoor school in action, and I very selfishly went on one of the most beautiful days of the year to get out and spend time. But to Colleen's point, both the outdoor school and the ESSL are programs that have been around for a long time. And what we've had to do is adjust basically what level of service we provide as the sheer number of students and classes increase. And there's only so many staff members and so many days in the calendar. So both of these professionals to my left do have ideas and plans on how to expand. And so, in the future, you may see some conversations about that coming to the board from a budget perspective. But yeah, so they're wildly popular. And for instance, one of the things that we have been able maybe to do in the past is if a school is canceled on the day that a particular group was supposed to go, there was often maybe a spot where we could reschedule them. That's nearly impossible at this point. And so if you happen to miss your day, you're not able to attend. So those are some of the structural things that make outdoor school and ESSL program a little tighter. But like I said, if we ever found an opportunity to do some expansion to maintain that level of service, we'll be able to do it. And science fair?
Yes, science fair. So we are returning to in-person on Saturday, March 25th at Tuscarora. You'll be getting an official invitation, but please come out and see our scientists with our showing off their hard work. And we have, Chris has an elementary component, a middle and high school. Our high school division, our top 2 projects advanced to the International Science and Engineering Fair, which is a week in Dallas. And our fair is small but mighty. Our kids do very well there. And our middle school fair, the top 10% are nominated to go on to the national competition. And again, do very well at that as well. So I'm very excited to be back in person with science fair. We're just starting to gear up and advertise and get everything together for that. And I had the realization that our high school kids have never participated in a in-person, like they weren't able to do it in middle school because the last in-person fair was 2019. because 2020, we in 2 weeks turned it into virtual. It was really wild. And Envirothon is a high school program. Our the majority of our high schools put an Envirothon team together, and they have a practice in March, the second Tuesday in March, and then they have a competition in April, and we send the winning team on to the state Envirothon.
What's involved in that? What,
So there's 5 different areas. We have a lot of partners. It is done at Cunningham Falls State Park. So if you're interested in that, happy to give you the information so that you can check out. Our teams are small, and they have been meeting after school. There's one on soil, and there'll be a big like soil core there, and they'll be taking like written tests and things like that with soil. And there's also fisheries and trees. They will mark trees, and they'll have to identify trees and measure trees, and soil fisheries. I'm missing some. There's a 5th one that changes every year. It's called the 5th issue, but it's conservation based, but it's very hands-on and practical. We have partnerships with soil conservation and DNR and everything.
And we love invitations, because it's one of the people think we know what's going on, I assume it's on the calendar, we love invitations.
And yes, and usually that first one in March, dress warmly.
Yes.
Because often if it's not snowing, it's like that little cold rain, which is the worst, and it's rain or shine. Women in Science and Engineering, we call it WISE. We are returning. It is once a month on Wednesday evenings. Chris is generous enough. We go over to the ESSL. I have lined up female STEM professionals come and speak. It is open to all of our students, all of our high school students. We do gear it towards our high school girls, but it's open to all. And our first meeting is next Wednesday. So I'm very excited about that. Our benchmarks, as Dr. Cash spoke about, we also, all of our local benchmarks are required this year. Our benchmarks are aligned to the Maryland Integrated Science Assessment. So they have drag and drop, and they mimic the platform of the Maryland Integrated Science Assessment, because when they're taking the MISA, I don't want them to be like the first time they've ever seen like drag and drop and fill in the blank and all of this tech enhanced, because I want them not to focus on that, focus on showing what they know. So we purposely tried to mimic that. And they are short. They're about 5 to 6 questions, and about 5 tech enhanced, and then 1 short constructive response question. And there's 3 of them per high school course, and it's spread out. It's not supposed to be this big event. It's not supposed to be at the end, but really taking the temperature of the curriculum as they go through. We use it to refine our resources. Is it a good question, or do we have the right resources to prepare the kids? And in middle school, it's 1 per quarter. So there's 4 through middle school, but it's tied to a standard. And the Maryland Integrated Science Assessment, MISA, which is part of the MCAP program. The MISA is given in 8th grade and assesses the middle school band of the Maryland State Science Standards. Our data that we received from last year, we were above the state average. We were in the top 10 of the state. And our life science MISA is right now is a participation course. So they sit and take the MISA for graduation requirement. Starting next year, it is becoming an end of course assessment, and will count as 20% of their final grade.
I agree with you about the format, like getting them used to the different tech things and the testing. We used to talk about that in elementary, that you had to expose them to that, otherwise what were you testing? Their ability to do the computer or their knowledge. So I think I totally agree.
Because they get like, it's amazing, like the whole, oh, look, I can highlight. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
don't spend your 20 minutes
Highlight.
highlighting. Yes, yes.
Yeah, highlight the whole thing. Do you have any?
Questions about secondary science? before
No,
we
that was
go?
very thorough, and thank you for.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually had some questions, but you answered them along the way.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, Colleen, you're gonna flip for me?
Yes, I am.
Good.
I'm like ready in the driver's seat.
Good. Ms. Allen, thanks for joining this committee and got a great committee. I think you can tell we're passionate about our content and excited, and we love to get to talk to you. So this committee setup is a great opportunity for us to connect with you and share and let you know what we're doing. So we always cherish this time. Thank you. Just going to start by talking about the school blueprint courses or our curriculum maps that we develop every summer. To me, this is the key to our success over many decades, is having summer curriculum writing where we bring in teachers, and teachers are responsible for the development of our curricular resources. Of course, we select resources and bring them in and vet them, but it's having those teacher voices that has been so impacting. So when teachers are looking at the curriculum, they're seeing the work of teachers. And to us, that is the best. So we can't say enough about that and how that's impacted the response to our curriculum resources over the years. We've got a few new resources, one of which was Generation Genius, which you vetted in secondary, and we have access to it this year. There's a lot of challenges with electronic resources and broken links and using open source resources. So this new tool has been great for us, and we've already had a real positive response from teachers. Very excited about that. We also, thanks to Dr. Cuppet and the support we've gotten through him, finally we've gotten this supplementary text at grades 3, 4, and 5. If you want to flip through them later, you can, but they're textbooks in the classroom, and it's just been something we've wanted to see for a long time. Not as our program. Our program has been a hands-on, kit-based program for over 30 years, and we're proud of that. We love to have the hands-on piece, but having a resource that they can turn to and utilize in their hands is something super exciting. There's also an electronic.
Chris, if you don't mind, I want to
No,
step back to the Generation Genius.
Oh yeah.
One of the things we've done in public education is go out and find a bunch of resources from lots of different places. And so Chris was thinking about or talking about that broken link. So let's say we've gone out, we found an interesting resource out at a science museum site. Well, as soon as the science museum changes that link, that link is now dead in curriculum. And this happens not only in science, but across public education, not only here in Frederick County, but elsewhere. And so over since my tenure here, so this is my 9th year, we have been really trying to develop our own proprietary purchased kind of system so that something like Generation Genius that we paid for is now reliable. We know that it meets our student data privacy requirements, it meets certain accessibility requirements, and so on and so forth. And that's what you'll hear us refer to as our digital ecosystem. It's the things that we own within our FCPS environment. We work very closely with our friends in SASA for assessment-based tools that we own, that we can monitor the student data. Dr. Harris's team, tools specifically targeted to our EL students or to support the needs of special education students or advanced academics learner. And I kind of call it almost the professionalization of the resources we have available for teachers and students. Because if we're going to place this in front of students, we want to make sure all of those particular requirements have been met. So we were very excited that Colleen had kind of done an initial run on Generation Genius at the secondary. We've now been able to apply that to the elementary. So you'll probably hear that in the future years about where a resource like Lexia became the ELA resource of choice. Alex is the secondary mathematics. iReady is in elementary mathematics. So it's important that we have stuff that we feel super comfortable with and have met those requirements. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. Thank Colleen advanced the slide for me. We're a good team here.
Yeah, you did.
She handed me the mouse. I'm like, no.
No, I got it. Yeah, if I
You
feel
don't want
like,
me to do that.
yeah, if I feel like you spent it too much on one slide.
I should just change it to the next slide.
Yeah.
If I miss something, I can back it up.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way.
Yeah, we're a good team, we balance each other.
Thank you. So the next bullet point has already been referenced. We've had opportunities with new hires, meet with them in August, and then in October, another opportunity, and the late hires in January. So these are the limited opportunities we've had. We value those opportunities to meet with teachers that are new in the field. But elementary teachers are generalists, and they don't come with a lot of background in science typically. And so we also don't have lots of opportunities for professional learning with them, except a few years back when we had a 3-year rollout of the next gen science standards. That was an opportunity to meet with them, but not much other than that. So just to back up, don't back up the slide, to our curriculum writers, we utilize the curriculum writers to embed as much professional learning and background knowledge into those curriculum maps as possible, because we don't have access to the teachers. But any chance we do, we value that. And another way we connect with schools and teachers is through our liaison program with STEM leaders, which now we meet after school. It had previously been a during the day type of setup, but each school has liaison, and it's our job to empower them, give them as many resources and opportunities. We introduce them to different professionals in the community. National parks came and presented. We learned about green schools. We introduced them to resources to try to make them an invaluable resource at their school. They're our go-to person, and we encourage them to touch base with their administration and share any things that are ongoing. So I think, so it's mentioned here, the 4th meeting on a special topic. We just had our last meeting and we're surveying them on what they might need. So I think what we're going to do is set up a special workshop for them to learn how to be a green school, which is going to be a pretty cool opportunity. Okay. We already mentioned the Earth and Space Science Lab. This is our 60-year milestone anniversary. It actually launched back when thousands of planetariums across the country were opening in 1962 with the space race. And surprisingly, we still exist 60 years later, which is amazing, through lots of different gigantic efforts. But since 2009, we've had a brand new building, state-of-the-art building, which has been a great asset and allowed us to expand our program. And as already mentioned, our staff has not grown since 1988. So, that. So
We've grown a little bit as a system since.
but we've had to scale back opportunities. They do meet with every 1st through 5th grade student, and some limited secondary opportunities. But we'd love to expand that, given the opportunity. But
Well, and I think Chris, sorry to interrupt,
No.
but one of the most significant changes is that the program pretty much is now you arrive at the ESSL and engage in the activities there. And I remember coordinating as an assistant principal, I believe in Twin Ridge, where the staff from the SSL would come in advance. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about kind of the older model of what that looked like?
we used to do that. They used to go in advance and set the classes up for their experience that they would have. And that's long since gone away with the staffing. So what we have developed now, which is less effective, but still has some merit or value, is a pre-visit on our ESSL website. So there are activities and things for teachers to do before they come, they have the experience, and then the after. During the pandemic, we had created over 50 different online experiences that still are. So a lot of good things happened, but definitely that was one of the things that we lost, was that face-to-face visiting the schools long ago. You said you'd like to be invited to things today, right now.
Yeah, I saw.
So
the
as soon as we can
invite.
wrap this up, that'd be good. We're having an event right now, and I've got to go get in my Olaf suit ASAP. who's a snowman, and I'm the shape of a snowman. So it's working out really well.
And I discouraged Chris
From wearing it, I'm
it
like, should I
today.
wear it? So I can just go straight. Just I wasn't.
So the students still go to the actual planning?
Yes.
Yes, that's
The planetarium is part of it.
Yeah, the planetarium. I mean, I remember that.
Yeah.
Right?
You remember the glow in the dark hallway?
Yes. of
Yes,
course.
see, that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
kind of thing that has a great impact. So when we built the new building, we for lots of budgetary reasons, we couldn't have a glow in the dark hallway, but we do have a glow in the dark wall, and so that's replicated. And yeah, they come and it's a lasting memory. So we're real proud of the program and the outreach we have to the community.
Please tell Ms. Allen about the history room.
You can tell her. Go ahead.
No, I give you the honor, Chris. Well, I have the same memories, Ms. Allen,
Okay.
of being an elementary middle school student, going to South Frederick to the planetarium.
Yeah.
And when I was new to FCPS a few months ago and visited the ESSL, Dr. Horn took me into the history room, which has a few artifacts of the old glow in the dark,
Yeah.
pictures from the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
and the whole bit. So
The
if you
Star
get over
Ball,
there,
the original Star Ball
Yeah.
from 1962.
encourage you to visit the history room, give it a tour. It certainly brought some nostalgia for me as well.
Is Sir Isaac Newton there?
We don't have him anymore. That's a long story that I won't tell you. But,
Sad story.
I do. They kind of roll their eyes, but I'm a fan of the history room. I think it's a preservation of where we've come from and what we've done over the years. But thanks, because that meant something to you to see that history. I'll be glad to give you a tour anytime you come. Just a couple other program mentions I have here is we've been doing for, I think, 14 years now, the Great Frederick Fair educational field trip. We're now reaching about 25% of our elementary student population. It's all voluntary. People sign up before the school year ends for the fall field trip. And so far, we've kind of maxed out. Never turned anybody away, but that's about as many as we can handle. About 5,000 is as many as we can handle in a week, getting the buses in. But it's been a very successful.
Buses are probably the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes a little while to, obviously safely offload and unload. But I do want to give a shout out not only to our science team, including our support staff, but my team in general. This really has to draw a high number of boots on the ground folks. And so many of our folks from other content areas will go over and support that. And the whole system is run very effectively. So when you show up as a volunteer, you get a quick rundown on what your job is, but you can tell you're just part of this greater system. And if you think about, I don't know how many times I'll be standing there receiving students back, ready to get on the bus. I'll look at a parent, they look a little tired. And I'll say, hey, how was your day? And they go, how do teachers do this? And just the idea, and they only have, by the way, just let's clarify, this parent has 4 kids, right?
Right.
And so the effort that our chaperones from all of our schools and our teachers put in there, and Frederick has a very rich and still is the largest agricultural driver in the state, right? So it has a great history. And so this event really does connect kids to that history and maybe give some students an opportunity that maybe never would go down to the fair itself. So
And many of
great
them
event.
do. And just to add on to that, thanks, Dr. Cuppett. In addition to our team, Dr. John George is a retired curriculum specialist, coordinates the on-site volunteers at the different stations. He has over 100 volunteers. A lot of them are retired teachers. So it's always fun to see them smiling and looking overly happy because they're retired, but engagement.
It's so rested.
One day.
Yeah, but they come out and they love it. It's a great event. It's a great learning experience.
Yeah, I spoke to Morris Gladhill, who is, when I was at the fair this year, and he purposely grabbed me to talk to me about the importance of bringing students to the fair.
Yeah.
So I know that the fair board is very, very supportive of
Yes.
this, so
Good.
I'm wondering if there's a way to maybe engage them to help support this.
We want to have a formal, some kind of a formal partnership, if that's what we're gonna call it.
Yeah. I think you would.
We've had an
be
informal
happy to help
relationship for many
facilitate
years.
that.
If we want to call it something official, I think that would be great. It has different implications, but,
You know, he stressed he really did not want to see even if students didn't understand that Frederick County was an agricultural county, but to have at least that one experience a year to understand that about where they live and their community. So,
yeah, we think it's
he was
great.
Very supportive.
So that's wonderful to hear. And yeah, so that is something I think we should look at, the possibility of a partnership, just to take it to another step. So a couple more bullets here. I mentioned the science fair, which has been a 3-year hiatus for us at elementary, because our experiences for elementary kids is very interactive with the students being interviewed, and it's always a highlight for our interviewers and for the kids to get a chance to talk science with an adult, and sometimes high school honor kids. So we're coming back, and then the STEM showcase is an interactive part of that, where it's not only just the projects, but also a lot of activities, opportunities for kids to learn a little bit about science. And then I also just mentioned the Arbor Day, Tree City USA. Karen, I think you've come in the past, and we'll invite you again, but that's an annual event. We're over 40 years doing that now. And this coming year will be at Waverly. Yeah, brand new school, so we're excited about setting that up, and you'll see an invite for that. And then the only last mention I have here is about our assessment. At this point, our assessments for elementary are optional. They're built based on the standards and give the teacher input and understanding of their students' understanding of the curriculum. And then the MESA assessment is administered at grade 5, and that is developed around the standards from grades 3, 4, and 5. And over the years, we've had a great deal of success on the assessments, the statewide assessments. And this year, during the pandemic, we were really pleased to see that we were 3rd in the state. And that's something we're proud of and want to continue. But we're also glad to be back. During the pandemic, maintaining the scores is great, but being back face-to-face and with students and more hands-on is, of course, a great thing. So, any questions, comments from?
I think the only thing that occurred to me to ask was, I know last year with negotiations, FCPS's one ask of FCTA was to kind of take away, not one that's the wrong way, because it was done very well. Meg Lee, with organizational development, was noticing that new teachers, they didn't have enough time with the flexible professional development day, so that was changed to be the mandatory. But my recollection was it was content-based. And so when I heard Colleen say the secondary teachers tend to be very schooled in their content, but it's the pedagogy. But from what you said, and being a former elementary teacher, whose father, as I said, was a retired nuclear physicist, but who really had an attitude myself about science until college, University of Maryland, science-based, failed zoology, got a D in botany, and got an A in astronomy. So I learned at that point that I was much more of a science person than all. But so back to my question. So is that then for the new teachers where they can get the content through organizational development, new teacher training? Are you finding that yet, or?
Well, we've had some opportunities with these couple different day-long opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough. In a busy work day for a typical elementary teacher, as generalists, finding the priority to take a class. We've offered in the past MSDE 1, 2, 3 credit courses, one content, and we've gotten some initial, when we changed to the new standards, some response to that, but then less. And so again, what we try to do is build as much content into our curriculum maps as possible to read to the teachers. But it's a busy elementary world, and we just don't have a whole lot of response to outside of the school day content classes. We wish they would. It's evident that the teachers don't have the content knowledge.
And then with the fifth grade testing and having taught fifth grade, I want to 4 years, I think, where the fifth graders get tested in everything, basically,
Yeah.
even in band and with their specialist classes, fifth graders get tested a lot. And so then there was definitely taking part of science to cover third, fourth, and fifth. I remember covering the water
Yeah.
cycle. I made them stand up and they rolled their eyes, but then during the testing, they saw them doing the motion water cycle. So.
And we build in the review for the standard for 3, 4, and 5, which is a big weight for the fifth grade teachers to carry.
That's a big weight for the kid.
Yes.
I mean, I just think about, 2 years for kids in fifth grade. They're like, they think back to third grade. Oh, I remember back when I was in third grade, like it's, 100 years ago that they developed. Yeah, the grade band assessment is a challenge. And I think our fifth grade teachers take that seriously and they feel a certain amount of pressure associated with that. But I think Chris and the team have been really intentional in the way the curriculum units are designed to try to be. And the way we sequence science in fifth grade is that science is, concentrated in the first half of the year.
Exactly. So there's time for review before the assessment.
And then social studies in the second half. Yeah. Because that time block is shared in the elementary schedule, so you're either science or social studies.
So, I mean, honestly, when we develop curriculum and work with our teachers, it is our goal and has been for many, many years. It's going to sound really silly, but we say we're going to make these resources irresistible. So a teacher seeing like, I've got to do this with our students. This is so cool. They're going to have so much fun. And that draw into the curriculum and the materials is, I think, one of the big reasons why we have so much success. The students do remember because the teachers build in the time. They want their kids to have those experiences. Because it is very.
I definitely agree with that. I remember science was fun to teach, and it was not, it's maybe my background, but it was fun to teach. Messy, often
Yeah,
messy.
yeah, it's
but-
very
but
messy.
fun.
It's got to be worth it. It's messy. It's got to be.
I know.
That's what we try to do.
Well, I think it's good. I think kids, the hands-on, the tactical experience, draws these kids in.
Oh yeah, and they remember it.
Yeah.
You still remember the glow in the dark hallways.
I still remember all my science classes,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
That's great.
Not that I did well, but was not my wheelhouse, but I enjoyed it. Yeah.
If I may, I just wanted to underscore the student programs that they highlighted today, particularly the outdoor school and the SSL. They were humble about it, but from an equity point of view, we're serving all students, and they're really, really intentional about all means all, with seeing every student in those grade levels, seeing all of our schools, the thousands and thousands of kids that we see. And it's like running a school. Things pop up. Things with the facilities, and buses break down, and staff get sick, and all those things they're handling day to day. So I just wanted to give you credit for the leadership of those programs. It's kind of invisible to the community, but a lot goes on behind the scenes, and it has a real impact. So thank you all.
Anything else?
That's it, 'cause I know you all have
Yeah.
places
It's
to be.
It's all off time. Thank you.
Yeah, have fun out there.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
It's a pleasure meeting you guys.
Thanks for being a fan, Karen.
What's that?
Thanks for being our fan of science. We need fans.
Always. Any thoughts to getting a Drupal replacement?
Not yet. That was a big loss for us, and there's behind the scenes, it was a lot for an elderly iguana. It was a lot of care and money, and so Laura's not ready yet. She was the primary carekeeper. So, but I think we'll get a new mascot. We're just not. We're moving slowly.
I like the horseshoe.
Thanks, everybody.
So I can't pick them up. All right, so we're looking now future.
So,
Right.
February
I got
is
it. Yep, good.
one of those meetings where it's outside of the curriculum department, but our colleagues in organizational development will be giving an update. That's where you're going to hear about some of these structures that we have, Karen, that we're working with our early career teachers and a number of things. That also has not only professional learning induction, but also leadership development is in that group. Jen will be bringing back some information around the accelerated learning process, which is a process we monitor student achievement and try to push students forward in areas that they are having challenges with. So that'll be a great background because Nancy, you're going to hear ALP, and so getting a good rundown of that, you're like, oh, that was that presentation.
I was glad because I was thinking the same thing when it came up, and so seeing that, that's
Good. Good.
March 8th will be what we often, our department refer to as the big meeting. That's when we bring forward any proposed curriculum standards changes, pilot courses or new courses. And so some of these 0.5s that you've been hearing about,
Yeah.
you'll get a rundown on those. The way that works is they're presented here at CNI, and then they move forward, not in that same evening meeting, but at the next board meeting, and they move forward at the consent for the whole board to approve. So this is the major responsibility the board has in curriculum approval. And then on the 19th, you can see VPA. There's going to be some great information coming forward from VPA. I think you saw the email that Kim Hirschman had sent out recently. Following the ALP conversation, Jen Bingman and her team will then talk about intervention. So when we have students in the ALP process that need a little more help than they're getting in their classroom, what does that continuum of interventions look like? Our multi-tiered system of supports academically. We'll have big math updates in May because in next fall, we'll be rolling out new mathematics programs in 6th through algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and in grades 3 through 5. So they'll be talking to you just math updates in general, but specifically about new programs. And then English learners and the virtual school, both will be great updates as to what's happening in those departments and in that particular school. Both of those professionals, Dr. Gall and Mr. Watson, are very passionate about their areas. They might even bring some friends with them to share. And then we are requesting to add district committee on assessments, and that'll be Mr. Murphy and Bingman, who that's a legislative mandated committee to look at all those that you heard Dwayne and the science folks talk about those benchmarks. Those are all evaluated through a district committee assessment. And so Scott and Jen have been running point on that committee this year, and they're going to be bringing update information. So that'll wrap us up through at least June, and then closer to the end of the year, we'll bring a draft schedule to you guys for the 23-24 school year. And if at that point you have some topics that you want us to address during the year, we'll try to find the best time to get that on the schedule for you.
And we're looking at, I happened to run into Megan right before winter holiday. We just got talking, and I had gone to research ed, and she was just saying she was very appreciative, and it was so interesting. I could only stay the morning. But then she was coming back, and then I was at Oxford, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I said, wow, so an agenda item has been presented. So we get a little background here, but then at some point the full board's going to hear about it. With whatever she decides to present to us, or whatever we ask for, so that would be great. I think we're also in the process. President Johnson wants an update, and got I was one of them, where we're at with the science and reading, because the full board needs to know this. It's
Sure.
very important. And, we try to cover what happens, like tonight, we'll give a report, but it's just not the same. We encourage them to look at the PowerPoints and watch video, but it's just not quite the same as having it presented to yourself, finding that time to focus. So she felt it was super important to be able to do that. So, and I was going to ask about curriculum writing. Is it going to be still the virtual or? So
it'll be a little bit of discretion left up to the specialists. Some specialists last year instituted a kind of kickoff day that was face-to-face. Some instituted a kickoff day and then a week later had a check-in day, which was like, some kept them all virtual. One of the things we've learned as a result of the pandemic is that the virtual experience actually gets us some curriculum writers who wouldn't otherwise be able to, pay for daycare, come for half a day. It used to be we traditionally did that face-to-face for a number of weeks. And so it's actually broadened the pool of potential writers for us. So I think a lot of our folks are interested in keeping that together, but maybe with these check-in days. And I think last year I think we were at the LLC, we had probably about 4 or 5 specialists. If there was a day you wanted to come in and see it, we can certainly make sure that you're aware of the more in-person type of days. And
We
then
have the schedule and it's like, oh, rats, I missed the, the virtual check-in.
the time
Yeah.
block to get into the meat
Yeah.
of the thing. So, yeah. So we can give you the invite if you want to be at one of the days where we had a cluster of folks together that were doing the face-to-faces or kickoff day.
I did curriculum writing for about 10 years. That's why Chris Horn would have all these little challenges just to kind of bring everybody together no matter what you were working on. So Route 11 chips, boy, that's been quite
Yeah.
a few years.
Yeah, Chris has a theme for every one of his written writings.
Yes.
Some of them have resulted in throwing the breakers. I had a pancake event one time, and he had a bunch of electric griddles put in there, and it kind of overloaded the system. Next thing you know, that wing went dark. And little Tim, I really had to go and find the breaker to turn on so that everybody could start back up again. But he does have a loyal set of writers that are willing to come out every summer and tell how it's going.
Well, meeting people is.
Yeah, make it fun.
Right, but the first one I ever went to was in Urbana High. It was like, come visit the planetarium. I'm like, I opened that school as PTA president. There is no planetarium. It was the dark room and the
Right.
photography. And his family, his kids were like still teenagers and they rolled their eyes and then they were totally in.
Right.
And because the door swivels and they like pull you through into the dark and make all these, and then you get a button with glow in the dark stars, which I still have somewhere. I know I still have that. But it's always fun. So, thank you, everybody. And did you want to say anything, Mark? You got to sit quietly.
I think I'm Mark Fritz, I'm the elementary director. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
So usually somebody from our department comes on a rotating basis.
Okay.
So this is my day to be here today.
And I don't know, did you meet Linda Raines?
But we haven't really, yeah, but I know.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.